Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me for something pretty cool today. I'm back here in London, back in the storage with some of the Shmeemobiles, having driven back from Germany in the AMG GTR Pro, a long late night slog. But back here now today to head to Dub Customs for something I've been quite looking forward to. Now I did want to actually take the Ferrari GTC 4 Lisso, but as you might have seen, the car currently has some battery issues, which I'm going to need to get sorted out at some point. Not enough time right now. So I'm actually going to hop in the McLaren Senna to go to Dub Customs, where they have taken delivery on my behalf while I was in Germany of kind of my first car. You might remember this story with my 2005 Renault Clio, the first car that I ever owned. Well, I've bought it back, kind of. Let's hop in the Senna, go to Dub Customs and see what's going on. If you hadn't caught the story a couple of months ago, I'd been trying for a long time to track down that first car. I think like everyone, my first car has a soft spot in my heart, my first trips, my first adventures, first bit of freedom, first road trip to another country, and basically I thought it would be quite cool to add it back to the Shmeemobiles, especially in the future Shmuseum. Well, I did kind of manage to find where it was and who owned it, but unfortunately, just before it had been involved in an accident, not a particularly bad accident, but given the low value of the car, I mean, it would have been worth £1,000 or so. It was enough to insurance write it off, which meant that it had to go to a scrapyard to be crushed. Now we had hoped, we were praying we would find it before it had been crushed. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to do so, but with some help from Tom the car dude, who has been an absolute legend throughout all of this, he managed to find exactly which scrapyard it had gone to, arranged everything with them so that when they were clearing out the yard, they would find the car. He then got it transported over to Dub Customs, an absolute hero. So I do technically now own my first Clio again. It's just, well, it's not exactly roadworthy. So today we're going to hop on board the Senna, go to Dub Customs and see exactly what state this is in and what we can do with it. While it wasn't the original intention to take the Senna today, I think it is quite fun to take by far the craziest car that I have ever owned to go and visit the first car that I ever owned. Now the 4GT will be having a run out coming up very shortly, and obviously I did intend to take the Lisso, but things today did have other ideas, and at some point I'm going to need to work out how to get that sorted and get the car back up and running. For now though, it is a Senna outing. The weather outside is lovely. It is perfect for the occasion. I cannot wait to drive it again, just trying to find the key in my pocket at the moment. We'll come through, basically I'll hop on board, get the car pulled on out, need to take it off the tyre cushions, unplug the trickle charger as well, and head on the road over towards Dub Customs. I can tell you what I didn't miss: London and its traffic jams. Obviously we get the stop-start even in the Senna, but it takes a very long time to get anywhere. Now I know at the moment I do keep my cars in the city centre, so I do this to myself, but I'm thinking more and more that this Shmuseum unit venue location, I need to move it out to the countryside, especially after the last couple of months in Germany. I barely sat in traffic anywhere at any point, driving lovely roads around the Nürburgring, that kind of thing. And I think England has so much countryside as well that I probably need to change my priorities in this respect. However, being back in the Senna, yes, I heard, this is a strange thing, but every time you get in a car like this, it's being reminded again quite how mental it is. I mean, the SLS Black Series and the GTR Pro, those are crazy cars, but this is like crazy times 1,000. It's a completely different thing. I think it's going to be a fairly gentle cruise out of town. We'll get towards Dub Customs. It's about a 40-50 mile journey or that kind of thing out of London. Great to be back in this, but I think taking it easy today, no dramas, to get out there and go and see the Clio. Now, it arrived at Dub as literally kind of a cuboid. It has been pulled apart and stretched out a little bit to see what they could work out of it, what parts are there, what can be used, how it can be kind of dismantled and rectified into something. Obviously it can't become a car, it's long beyond that, but we'll get there. I'll get to see it properly for the first time. Oh, this thing is fun and noisy, obviously. I'll see it for the first time. I've seen some pictures, but I'm quite intrigued to actually kind of poke around and see what we've got and be reunited with the car that I sold in September 2008. It's been a long time. I had it for about 3 years and 3 months. Anyways, let's get out of London. This is no fun at all. Go see the Clio. Slowly getting somewhere. So I'm actually going to put the car into active dynamics. That was a bit of a squeeze from the person in front. So we are in sport, and manual. Obviously it's been a while since I actually drove this car. first gear as we go out onto the motorway. That's where it's mental loud. Goodness. You know, it's the savage feeling of power, and I have to wait just a moment until we get out onto the motorway proper. Obviously, it's very, very loud in here. Never forget that. Oh, this is a frustrating 50 mile an hour. Come on, okay, here we go. 70 coming up. Drop some gears. Squeeze of the power. What? And by the way, the short shifting comes from just how much power it is. Wow. Easy to forget. Out into more of the open then. This is what we need with this car. It's not a car that likes to be driven gently. Unsurprisingly, it's a little bit mental though. You do put your foot down. Just as it opens up straight to here. I need to get this back on the autobahns or the Nürburgring or something. I mean, I have done in the past. It's savage, it's ferocious. It's actually fascinating though to have this alongside the Clio box, which I guess is not so much of a box, because those two cars, if you think about it, from 73 horsepower to 800 horsepower, from everything about the Clio to the Senna, it's actually crazy. I'm having a moment of reflection here. I'm excited to see this thing, to see what the Dub guys have done with it so far. So, not too far to go now, out of the traffic, and hopefully be there without any trouble. I'm here then at Dub Customs and parked the Senna alongside what was once my first car, my Renault Clio, which of course it is sad to see looking like this, but in one way it's also quite exciting to think about what we can do with it. Let me show you a little bit though of the crushed remains of something that was so dear to me back at the time. We can poke around a little bit. I want to be careful not to cut myself on any of the shards of metal or different things that are around, but for example, this is one of the doors. You can see some of the components inside. Everything has kind of been folded and wrapped over. This is the front of the car. The engine was removed, all of the interior trim, and I imagine parts like the steering wheel, things that could have been sold, were all taken out as well before it was crushed. So the original 1,000 kilos or so of car is probably now about, what, 700 kilos, 800 kilos, that kind of thing. You can see we've got the hubs, we've got the tail light, I think, back here, the rear right corner. This must be the boot. You can see some of the glass, and the original damage actually was back here. It was to the boot and also to the rear right corner. Unfortunately, given the value of the car, this had to be the result. By law here, when a car has been written off by insurance, and in this case it gets a certain category, it has to go to be crushed, to be scrapped, to go to a breakers or a scrapyard. But now we've got it. Now we can look at what we can do with this, what the future could be, what we can make it into, how it can be something in the Shmuseum to sit alongside the Senna. But how crazy to go from what was my first car to now the most extreme Shmee-mobile to date, to see them side by side. I had so many memories with this back when it was a Clio. You know, first cars, it was the first time I could go somewhere on my own, the first time I went places, travelled to see friends, I lived in the countryside, the first time that I actually slept in the car overnight at the side of the road somewhere, the first adventures when I took it on a road trip, a big road trip down to the French Alps to go skiing for a couple of months to work, a kind of working holiday out in France. And actually I took two friends with me. We stuffed the car so much, and two people that you might know, Benzine Ben and Sam Moore's Photography. We were friends, what, 12, 13, this must be 13 years ago, 13 and a half years ago, and we had so many things on board this Clio that we actually had to put Sam in the back, and then Ben and I had to load the stuff in on top. I think Sam even had a guitar over his head. He was a big guitarist, so he took a guitar with him, and we had that in the car as well, and it actually bowed down the back of the car, and I think even damaged the suspension, and I had to have some components replaced at the next service that came afterwards. But all of those memories that were with this, or at least were with what this used to be, and now I have bought it back. It's kind of like buying a car, except I don't think we can really call it a car. It's more like buying scrap metal. It doesn't have a registration certificate or any kind of ownership documents, just the metal from the scrapyard. But when you look around it in more detail, and I imagine here at the front end, obviously the engine was taken out, but you can see the crushed frame and all the components. I imagine there's a chassis plate somewhere here that if we started unfolding bits of metal, we might be able to cut out, which would be a really cool thing to keep. Obviously this is a door. You can see the window rubbers. This is the, I guess, outer door card. This is the inner door card. In fact, you can see some of the parts in here. I guess this must be a speaker grill. You've got the stop check here when you open the door. Will have been the hinges kind of on here as well. All the different parts, the locks. You can go into some interesting components around here. We've got the hubs. Maybe I can make the hubs into clocks. One idea we had is that perhaps we could take out like the screws and bolts and small things and maybe make them into little figurines. That could be an option. But I'd really love to hear from you guys what you think we could do with this. I don't think it works as necessarily a bit of furniture. I think it's a little bit too big and awkward to be a desk or anything like that. But we've got all of this metal that we can chop up, we can do things with. We could make this into something. You know, maybe the exhaust that we've got back here, the hubs, these are all components that can be pulled out of this. We can unfold some bits of metal, try and take off the doors and come up with some creative ideas and ultimately keep it as a piece in the Shmuseum with the likes of the Senna and the other Shmumobiles as well. But it's a weird one for me because I spent a long time trying to find this car. Here in the UK, you can check if a car is still on the road. You can't get any details like the owner or where it's doing its annual service checks, but you can see that it's still going. So I've known for a long time the car was out there, and I came so close to getting it. I'd reached out when we finally found where it was. I did reach out before it had been crushed, but I didn't get a reply back. I guess maybe it was a bit awkward considering what had happened. I didn't get a reply back until it looked like this. But that's where I have to say again, a massive thanks to both the guys here at Dub Customs and also to Tom the car dude for tracking it down, for making loads and loads of phone calls to try and find where this car had gone with very little information, and ultimately to do all of the work that was involved in getting it here to at least save it from just being broken down and crushed even more and all of the parts being separated, so that we could do something cool with it, to get it transported over here, to get it unloaded here at Dub Customs as well. And now we have this with, well, we've got to come up with some ideas for what we can do with it. Even the wiring loom is still in here. Look, you can still see the wires hanging around. We've got various different bits of wiring all around it. Ideas. I wonder what we can do. In any case, coming to see it is cool. Coming to see this is really cool. And to have the Senna with it as well, I guess it's a bit of almost a proud moment for me as well, to have gone from the Clio to the Senna. And I mean, yeah, it's a cool thing. I think we need to come up with some really, really nice ideas with this and what we can do with them. There are, however, a few little problems with this lump of metal. The first is how we're ever going to move it. It might be a lot smaller than a car now, but I think it's still pretty heavy, so not exactly the easiest. And then the second is how to store it. Obviously, the Shmumobiles will be moving at some point before long to a new unit, a Shmuseum as we're going to call it, and I will try to make a space to have this in whatever final form we decide, but I think it's worthy of keeping alongside the cars. I think it's a really cool story for me as well, to have found it, to have recovered it, to save it almost from the jaws of death at the final hurdle. I mean, it's kind of, in a way, been through that, I know, but at least in some form it lives on, and it will live with the Senna and the Ford GT and the other cars in the future. Alright then, back on the road towards London, hopefully a little less busy than it was on the way out. Gosh, the way this car steers, the front end just dives in towards corners. It is brilliant. McLaren's have always had fantastic steering. The front end is so, I mean, it just gives you so much feel and feedback of exactly what it's doing. Obviously, you can't drive a car like this in the UK, and after spending so much time driving in Germany, it's coming back here where I really realise how much it's different. UK roads are noisier with the tarmac, they're bumpier, the speed limits are so low everywhere, and there's nowhere that you can open a car up. You just can't use the power of a car like this anywhere at all. Obviously this thing is so loud that here it makes no sense. As McLaren say, it's not sanitised, and honestly, driving the little Clio when it was an actual car actually makes a lot more sense than driving this silly thing does, which is kind of odd. I've said kinda way too many times today, I'm sorry, but that's, I guess, what's kinda in my mind when it comes to the Clio and where exactly that is. Anyway, I'm gonna cruise back towards London, back towards the garage, and probably get this parked up. But there is a quick update to give you about the Ferrari when we get there. This is another thing about the UK. We're in a national speed limit 70-mile-an-hour section, the left lane where everybody should be moving to if they're not overtaking. So everybody should be in the left lane, and they're all sitting in the right lane. Lane etiquette here is horrendous compared to Germany, where everybody does it correctly. Oh, nice sunset in front of us. But yes, the hopes of going 70 miles an hour, the speed limit, when people drive in this way is kind of frustrating. It's such a big difference in terms of driving between Germany and the UK. And I'm sorry, it's just gone really probably I've got quite an early start tomorrow for some very exciting things. So that means I will have to update you on what's happening with the show tomorrow, but fingers crossed, seems to be my phrase of the month, it's going to be good news and we might be able to get it back to life. But let's find out. For the time being, just a little drive into central London to get back home. And then I can tell you everything that's in the works and what's coming up. Back in the garage then. I guess the Senna hasn't been here for quite a while actually. And tomorrow morning I'm going to be heading with that over to the storage to swap to the Ford GT to drive back to Germany. Yes, that's been a whistle-stop visit back to the UK. I've actually been here for a little over 24 hours in total, but I'm going to be jumping on board the Ford GT, heading over, hopefully going via the Nürburgring if I have time to do yet another lap. That car has done some laps before heading down towards Frankfurt, and then the next day, something really cool as well, which I'm looking forward to an awful lot. Today though, it was great to see the Clio. It's been a long time coming. It's a shame it's not what it could have been, but let's look to the future and make it into something really cool to keep in the Shmuseum. For now though, that is all. Thank you very much for watching. As always guys, I appreciate your support an awful lot, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers!